So Theresa May survived the confidence vote, but was this a Pyrrhic victory with just 200 out of the 317 MPs supporting her? Political analyst Alexandra Kellert joins us now from Control Risks. Alexandra,
hello.
Good to talk to you. What a day to come in to discuss. There's lots to talk about.
Absolutely.
But first of all, your verdict on that vote of confidence yesterday in Theresa May.
Well, as you say, it's a victory, but it's hard to know how long it will be a victory for, because in so many ways we're really back where we were on Tuesday. The deal isn't going to get passed through Parliament. She's not going to get any real changes from Brussels. So what can she do next?
Is she a wounded horse, though, do you think?
I think she was already a wounded horse, and postponing the vote on the withdrawal agreement really demonstrated that she knew she was wounded.
And how does this go down with the Euroskeptics, who are, after all, the ones that were after her blood?
Well, it's tough to know what they can do now. They've really played their only card, which was to try and oust her. And so they will continue to oppose the deal, and they will vote it down in Parliament when it gets there, and they will continue to talk against Theresa May.
And where does it go then politically from here? Because we've seen some MPs now saying this is a time which would normally be associated with times of war or real emergency to have a unity government. Do you think that's the next stage on this? Because one can't see a resolution from within the Conservative Party to get a deal done here with those of that party. But there are some in Labour that are quite clearly behind Theresa May on this move.
There are, and they're generally those in Labour who are sort of distant from the leadership in Labour. I think it's very difficult to see Theresa May admitting that we're in a position where we need that sort of government anytime soon. I think she'll continue to try and push things down the road until it gets to the crunch time. And then, to be honest, the people who do potentially hold the cards now are the Labour Party and the Labour leadership, and whether they try and force a confidence vote in the government.
What is crunch time? Because we've already got to that point, haven't we? Because, as I say, she now knows that there's more than 100 people within her own party that don't like what she's doing. At what point will she realise that she's either got to take counsel from those that are not on her side, or that she comes up with something else that is appealing to the broader base?
Well, she will try to sell whatever she gets back from Brussels as being what that broader base is looking for. I don't think that will work in the long term. I think what does slightly work in her favour is that, you know, Christmas is coming up, Parliament will be going into recess in just over a week. If she can get to that point and then try and hope to come back in January when minds might be concentrated with that deadline of the 21st of January there.
Well, let's talk about the EU side of things and what she's going to come back with, because they have said from more than one party within Europe, from more than one of the 27, saying we're not going to change anything. So that is already putting a brick wall up from where we go from here, isn't it?
It is, and so Theresa May continues to say, I will go and get assurances on the backstop. The EU says we're not going to change the withdrawal agreement. What they might be prepared to do is to slightly tweak that political declaration which looks at the future relationship. But I just don't think Theresa May can sell that to the parts of her party who are so opposed to the deal. And
she keeps on saying that by come the end of March we leave the EU. Ultimately, is that going to be no deal, or do you think the parliamentarians will all get together at some point as a unity-type government to say we can't allow this to happen?
I don't think it even needs to be a unity-type government. There is not a majority in the House of Commons for no deal. And the amendment that Dominic Grieve had passed through Parliament last week essentially gives Parliament some sort of power to try and prevent that from happening. What it doesn't do is decide what then comes in its place, which could be, is it go back to the EU and ask for an extension of the Article 50 negotiating period, or is it to say we're walking away from the agreement?
The agreement completely. Well, if that happens, do we then go back to the people? Is that the next stage? And do you, as a political analyst, do you think that would work? I mean, we've already heard from those that voted to leave. Why should I have to place my vote again? The circumstances are very different now, perhaps maybe according to some.
That's true.
But is there a need, do you think, to clear the air and go back to the people with another referendum?
There are certainly an argument that it could be. What is the problem is that there isn't really time for that to happen before March because of the process to put a referendum in place. There is the argument that it could just dig up old wounds and actually be more brutal than the 2016 referendum campaign. Although there is a shift in the opinion polls towards Remain, it's not necessarily big enough to show that after a campaign it would really have a different result.
So where do you see the end game here? What do you see as the new relationship between the UK and the EU?
Well, to be honest, I think it will still remain close. I think something like the deal that Theresa May has negotiated is the most likely relationship. It's just persuading Parliament that the other options that they might have in their heads aren't possible or would be detrimental.
Yes, and from the EU side, are they, do you think, ultimately going to have to move?
Not really. They do hold most of the cards, and although it would be detrimental to them to have a no deal and to lose those close ties, in the longer run it would be less damaging for the EU than for the UK. And they're more concerned about keeping the bloc together. And they've, you know, Brexit isn't the only issue that the EU is having to deal with. You know, there's the Italian government's budget, there's, you know, Macron trying to reform the EU, there's Merkel stepping down. Brexit is not the only thing that's taking up their time.
We'll see what the new year brings.
Absolutely.
And we'll have you back in to discuss it when we know more about where we are in terms of the direction between this relationship, this interesting developmental relationship between the UK and the European Union. That was Alexandra Kellert from Control Risks.